Put a fork in the year 2025. It's done. It's time for me to do a statistical analysis of everything I read in 2025. Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I'm doing a statistical analysis of the books that I read in 2025. If you do not know, before I retired, I was a computer programmer, specializing in database development. So I have a personal database in Microsoft Access of every book that I have read since December of 1990. That's a lot of years, and that's a lot of data. So I can do some pretty heavy lifting on the data analysis of what I've read. If you don't like a lot of numbers, this video may not be for you. But I find it quite fascinating to keep a log of everything that I've read, because sometimes you forget a book that you've read over the years, or you think that you've read more than one type of book than you actually have, because the human mind is faulty. Putting all my reading logs reading into a database makes it solid, makes it something that I can look back on and show you. So I kind of hope you like this information, because I find it interesting. Not necessarily what books people read, but how they read and how it trends over time. What is the short and skinny of 2025? I finished 194 books, and I read 67,586 pages. Now, I'm going to pull up some charts. This is books read by format in 2025. You can see that 37.4% of my reading was audio, and 30.8% was print, and digital was 31.8%. As a format, audio rules, but since print and digital are really this physical reading that really does dominate my reading. Breaking this down into formats by pages, you can see the charts look very similar. 42.2% was audio, 25% was print, and 32.7% was digital. And that basically breaks down to audio was 26,586 pages, digital was 20,604 pages, and print was 15,751. So again, the most amount of pages read this year was on audio. Books make up only a part of my reading. I read a lot of short works. Now, a short work, in my definition, is something that is less than 100 pages. It's not quite a book, usually, but it does count towards reading. So I also log all my short works that I read during the year. Now, I do break down the short works into types. There is nonfiction, novella, religion, and short stories. Now, you'll notice that religion only has one thing read, and that's sort of an outlier, because I cannot count it as a nonfiction, and I cannot really count it as a fiction. But what I read was Ecclesiastes from the Bible. Now, I am not normally a person who would read the Bible, but one of the short stories I read in 2025 was A Rose for Ecclesiastes by Roger Zelazny. It was about a man trying to translate the work Ecclesiastes into the Martian language. So, of course, I had to read that Ecclesiastes after reading that short story, just because. But it breaks down to this. I read 4 works of nonfiction, 7 novellas, and 193 short stories that count as short works. Breaking down into format, it's 65.9% print, 13.2% was audio, and 21% was digital. Now, breaking this down into a page count, there was 1,375 in print, 1,052 on digital, and 829 in audio. I also want to include how my reading has changed over time. I'm going to be including some historical data. For this purposes, I'm only going to be counting books in either audio, physical, or digital, or the great courses. In 1995, I read 52 books. You will notice there were only print books read in 1995. In the year 2000, audio explodes on the scene. I discovered audiobooks in the year 1997. I read 36 print books, listened to 46 audiobooks, and read only one digital book. This again was 2000, and the Kindle was not on the scene yet. I believe this is the one book that I read on Project Gutenberg, and that would have been Henry IV, Part 1. In 2005, I read 72 print books, 37 audiobooks, 6 digital books, and 2 great courses. Now, I do separate out the great courses. They are audio. They're not exactly a book, but I do count them in my reading history. And here you can see in 2005, print was still the dominant format for me. Now it is 2010, and it's the digital time to explode onto the scene because the Kindle was introduced in the year 2008. I read 31 print books, 36 audiobooks, and 66 digital books. In 2015, I read 16 print books, 34 audiobooks, and 37 digital books. You can see that digital books have taken off and become dominant. This is, of course, after the Kindle. The Kindle was introduced in 2008, so it highly reflects my reading changes. 2020, 28 books, 52 audiobooks, 53 digital books, and 5 great courses. Again, you see that print is shrinking in my preference. Digital still holds firm, but audio is very close with that digital. I now want to show you my reading habits over time from 1995 through 2005 on this bar graph. You can see it starts off with print exclusively, and then you have a jump in audiobooks and another jump into digital books. And you can see that print had a spike in the year 2005 and then slowly dropped off. And then print started making a comeback in the year 2025. And audio has been a fairly steady growth. There was a bit of a dip between 2005 and 2015, but audio is becoming or has become a very dominant form for me in my reading. Let me show you about rereading. I am a big fan of rereading books. As I've said previously, a book is like a river. You cannot step into the same river twice, and you cannot actually read the same book twice because you are a different person when you pick up that book to read it again. But in 2025, I had 50 rereads, and that is about 25.6%. And the remaining 145 books were, of course, new reads, and that is 74.4%. I said in a previous video that I thought I read between 25 to 30% of my reading per year is rereads, and this holds true. The data proves it. I also track the nationality of an author when reading a book because I think it's important to read across the world. Other nations have other ideas than the one you live in, and I think it's important to read books from other countries. Now, in some cases, it's a little difficult to determine where to place an author's nationality. For example, I did read Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov in 2025, but what nationality should I place him in? He was originally born in Russia, and I felt confident that I could list him as Russian. But when he wrote Lolita, he had immigrated to the United States and become a United States citizen. So I had a choice to make. I decided for that to list him in the United States, but I could have easily put him in to Russia. Now, one of my goals into 2025 was to make sure that I read more books from other nationalities than the United States. I was also very picky. I wanted to make sure that I read more books from British authors or UK authors than I read American authors. That was just a slight thing that I was doing for myself. So here is the chart of what I read. From England, there were 86 books. The United States, 71 books. So I did make my goal. Now, on this chart, you're going to see other at 11. Those are nationalities that only have one book read for that author. So there's a whole clump of nationalities in there. But other than that, I read 5 books by Canadian authors, 5 books from France, Argentina, 4, Ireland, 4, Sweden, 3, Brazil, 2, Germany, 2, and Russia, 2. So I think I did a fairly good job of reading a lot of different nationalities. Let me break this down into the original language of the book. English, 171, French, 6, Spanish, 4, Russian, 3, Portuguese, 2, Swedish, 2, Chinese, 1, German, 1, Italian, 1, Japanese, 1, Korean, 1, Persian, 1, and Turkish, 1. So again, I think I have a good mix of translated works. A lot of readers like to read diversely. They seek out books from authors of different nationalities, different races, different genders, or different sexual preferences. When I wanted to work on a diversity project of my own, I decided I wanted to read works across many decades. I decided I was going to read a book from every decade beginning in the 1850s. And here is my chart to show how that looks. Now, obviously, some of these decades only have one work, but you can see a grouping that's much higher than others. I had originally thought that I did not read a lot of new books. That is something that's just in my mind, and I tell people, oh, I don't read a lot of new books. But look at this chart. For books published in 2020, I've read more books than any other decade. And that surprised me. The 2010s is still high, but what I really kind of like looking at this chart, you can see some trends. The 1970s, 32 books. I guess there's something that I like about the 70s. The 80s has a fairly strong following, as does the 1950s. I guess that's a little bit of a surprise. And you'll see at the top of this chart, there's this blue line on the top left, and that is a pre-19th century, and I only read one book from the 13th century. That was a translation of poetry by Rumi. I really need to work on reading older works. And in the year 2026, I'm going to be expanding this Read Across the Decades project to make sure that I read everything or every decade from the 19th century, the 20th century, and the 21st century. I'm going to be a busy man. Books that I did not finish, the DNF. Here's the chart. I DNF'd 11 books, and that's only 5.3%. That's really not a bad percentage for DNFing. I do finish reading most of the books that I start. And another statistic that I put in beginning in 2025 was tracking whether the author was alive or deceased when I read the book. And here is my chart. Living authors is 51.3%, and deceased authors is 48.7%, and that breaks down to 100 living authors and 95 deceased authors. I think I read a lot of deceased authors, but I'm a little bit surprised again that living authors just squeaked it out to be on top. Okay, that is the end of my statistics for 2025. I really like statistics. I like keeping tracks of my book log. I'm not sure everyone likes to do this, but if you do, make your own videos. Talk about your own reading statistics because geeks like me will probably enjoy it. Thank you for watching and keep on reading.